Hello everyone, it's Elise. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, hey, what's up? My name is Elise. It is so nice to meet you. I would love it if you stuck around by subscribing. That big red button down below is the magic button. Just click it and you'll always be part of this family. So today I'm doing a story time. I haven't filmed a story time in a hot minute. And you guys seem to really like story time, so I figured I'd make a little bit more of a serious one and hopefully one that is a little bit educational and would kind of help somebody out there. Fingers crossed that this will help somebody out there, but if not, it's a fun story. I hope it's enjoyable. I don't really know. This is going to be the story of how I found out I had a learning disability and how I overcame the struggles and the stigma that came along with that. So if you're interested in hearing this story, then just keep on watching. Okay, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to say in this video. In fact, I already filmed it and kind of hated the way that it came out, so I'm starting over, but I just got this idea to film this video today. I was reading through comments on YouTube and I actually saw a comment that really touched my heart. I had kind of mentioned my learning disability in my back to school supplies haul, and somebody had commented that they would really love to hear more about it and just their story. It really inspired me, so I decided it was on my heart to kind of sit down and film this video. I guess I'll give you guys kind of a backstory. Nothing really significant about my childhood that stood out that I thought I was different. I always knew that I was different than my brother. He is super genius dude. I'm not even kidding. He is so smart. He graduated third in his class. He got a full ride to college. He is now a chemical engineer and he's working towards his master's simultaneously. That word is hard. And I am so proud of him, but I'm not gonna lie, it was definitely hard growing up in his shadow. Now, I'm not saying I am dumb by any means. I also believe that I too am intelligent, but nowhere near my brother. My brother is just an intellect. He craves knowledge, and for me, I think that I have really good communication skills. I think I'm a strong reader and writer. We're very different, but it was definitely hard growing up living in his shadow, and it is totally not his fault, but as my brother would leave school, I would be entering that school and there'd be this expectation for me to be Matthew's sister, and unfortunately I could never really live up to that expectation, and that is not his fault, not my fault. It's just the way it is. Siblings are different. We were born differently from the same parents, but just different individuals. Nothing really was different about the way I learned, at least I didn't think so, until I got to high school. I thought the material was pretty easy in 9th grade, you know, geometry, whatever, English, whatever, French class, whatever. But when I got into 10th grade and I had to take chemistry class, that is when I started to notice something wasn't quite right. I worked my butt off in chemistry class. I went in for extra help. I got a tutor that charged $50 an hour. I really wanted to succeed in that class, and I loved my teacher. She is the cutest lady alive. She had my brother. She had my brother's fiance. Like, everybody loves this teacher, except I just could not succeed in her class. And I would go in for help, and she said, "You're doing really great, you really understand the material, you're gonna be successful on the next test." And then I'd get down to the test and I'd fail. Every single time I would fail. And it just boggled my mind that how could I fail if I'm trying this hard and I know the material, I know the formulas? How could I fail? And my teacher, my chemistry teacher, sat me and my mom down and kind of expressed her concern that it just didn't make sense that when I was one-on-one with her and we were taking our time and we were learning the material, how I understood everything, but then when I went to take the test, I would fail. She said that she thinks that I should go to the school psychologist and get tested for a learning disability. And of course, I was very insulted when I heard this. A learning disability, all those stigmas, that meant I was dumb. She thought I was dumb. She thought I was incapable of learning the material like everyone else. I was in AP and honors classes. Why would I need to get tested for a learning disability? I am smart. I'm intelligent. I'm just like all my friends. Why do I need to get tested? I did not understand, but my mom, being the good mother that she is and still is, agreed and said, yeah, you should probably get tested if that's what you think. So fast forward to that summer, I went to the school psychologist. He was such a cool guy, and I underwent testing testing, and it was very extensive. It was in the course of 2 or 3 days, very long hours. They would ask me questions like show me a bunch of pictures of these random people's faces, and then I'd have to go back through and I'd have to see if I could recognize any of the faces. I remember I had to repeat a series of letters and numbers backwards and forward. I had to do reading comprehension, all sorts of extensive testing that is actually really quite fascinating. If you want to search on Google what learning disability testing entails, that'd be a really cool thing to do, because it is really interesting now looking back at the level of extensiveness of this testing. I was feeling very optimistic. I felt like I had crushed this learning disability test. And so when the school psychologist called me and my mom back in, I was expecting him to say, "Girl, you're good, your teacher's wrong, you just suck at chemistry." He called me back in and he first started off by saying, "Well, you have a very high IQ and you're super intelligent and very good at reading comprehension." And I'm like, tell me something I don't know. Followed by the but we found that you actually have a short-term memory deficit and visual processing disorder. I was like, so basically he went on to say that I have an issue with my short-term memory, which means information that is stored in my short-term memory often gets lost. So my mom said that explains so much why she asked me to pick up 3 things at the store and I come home with 1 and a random item that was not on the list. I have always had problems with my memory, but it was just kind of something that was laughed about. Oh, forgetful Julia forgot again. But it's actually a thing, like a short-term memory deficit. Explains why I have trouble cramming for exams. It's not a thing for me. And then for the visual processing disorder, that might sound kind of confusing, but basically what it is, if I see a number 6, I will see a number 6, but my mind will process it as a number 9 or a number 7 or 11, doesn't really matter. My mind perceives something that is different than what is on paper. So this is different than dyslexia, because for me, I'll be reading a whole reading comprehension thing and I would just maybe get 1 word wrong. So I will see the word happy and I'll perceive it as hoppy. But I can read all the other words fine, so my reading comprehension would be all good because I would get the gist of what it's trying to say. Now with numbers, I would see individual numbers wrong, which would cause really drastic errors in mathematics, in chemistry, anything that involves formulas, numbers, etc. So that explained a lot why I was not doing well in chemistry, because I was perceiving numbers and formulas different than what they actually are. So I felt kind of defeated when I left that meeting. I was like, I'm different. And as a teenager, you don't want to hear that you're different. Like, nobody wants to be different. I didn't want to be different. Nobody wanted to be different. You just want to be like everyone else. You just want to fit in. So I was kind of bummed about that. But my mom was feeling very optimistic. This is a really great time to figure out that you have this issue. You still have the rest of high school and you have college, and you're gonna know that you learn differently. It doesn't mean you're less intelligent, but you just learn differently. When I had my meeting with all my teachers, that is when we established my 504 plan, and I don't know why it's called a 504 plan, but all I know it's different than an IEP, which is an individual education plan. My learning disability was not so severe where I needed that, but I had a 504 plan, which means that I got time and a half on my test, which was extremely useful, which means basically if I had 2 hours to take that test, I would have 4.5 hours to take that test. And that sounds very extreme, but I actually needed that because of my short-term memory deficit and the visual processing part of it. If I had time to go back and look, I might actually see that 9 that I was perceiving is actually a 6, and I could correct all my errors. So the extra time was needed. There was also a section in there that stated that if I needed something reworded on my tests, then they could come around and do that. Nothing too crazy. The only thing that I thought was very generous was the time and a half, but that ended up being very useful. Now in high school it was really cool because if you had time and a half, that was kind of up to your teachers, that you wouldn't have to take it in a special room. You could just tell your teacher, you know, I'm gonna take my extra time, and they would arrange to do it in your own time, maybe during lunch to finish up the exam. I often did utilize those resources, and it did become really awesome until I had finals, and it was a rule that you had to take your finals in a separate room, and that really gave me huge anxiety because I knew my friends would be like, where is she during finals? And they'll be like, oh, she's in the learning learning disability room. And that gave me a lot of anxiety because I didn't want people to know. It was kind of my little secret. I was a little bit embarrassed and a little bit ashamed of it. Just because, again, in high school, you don't want to be different. You just want to be like everyone else. You want to take your finals and moan and groan with your friends, and you don't want to have to take it in a separate room. But to my surprise, when I was at the final in that room, I looked around and there were people that I never would have guessed had a learning disability and they were in that room with me. Like people that were in my classes, that took AP classes, that ended up going on to be like get full rides to college, like they had a learning disability, and so did I. It brought light to the situation knowing that there are other people that just learn differently. And for a lot of high school, like because of my learning disability, I did feel like I wasn't as smart as everyone else, never going to amount to as much as everyone else because of it. And it was just a misconception. This learning disability is just kind of a label. I feel like in society, we get so hung up on labels, like labeling everyone. Like for me, I was not normal, I had a learning disability, but if you put aside those labels, all it means is that I just learned a little bit differently than everybody else, and that I needed to take the time to learn how to learn again, if that makes sense. Flashing forward to college, my first university, I actually got my accommodations in place there. So my 504 plan actually transferred over to college with me. I'm not gonna lie, the first semester, I didn't get my accommodations approved ahead of time, so I struggled. I actually ended up failing a class because my professor wouldn't recognize my accommodations because they weren't necessarily approved by the university yet. So that kind of like lit a fire under my room, and I realized I really needed to step up and get those accommodations for myself. And as soon as I did, I started to do better, but I didn't do great because the class sizes were just too big, and I just was really struggling. And college is definitely tough. I also will add that I was not putting in the effort that I needed to in college. I was focusing way too hard on the social aspect and on cheering and all that stuff. So I'm not necessarily blaming the university because there are other resources and accommodations for you at university. At least my first university had it, and there is no reason why you should not succeed even if you have a learning disability. Now I am here at this university, which is so much smaller, and I don't even need my accommodations because every single teacher is so accommodating here, and the class size is so small. It's such an individualized education, and I often will go to my teachers and explain that I have, these disabilities. I don't even like to say the word disabilities. I have these struggles that I'm working on overcoming, but I sometimes learn a little bit differently, and so many times they are just so understanding and they really work with me to just make sure that I'm getting the material in my own way. So that's kind of my story on how I discovered it and what it was like for me going to school with a learning disability. Now as a 21-year-old senior in college, I must say that if you are struggling in school, definitely look into getting tested for a learning disability. Ever since I found out that I learned differently than other people, I've become so much better at studying and learning and listening and interacting with material than I'd ever in the past. And I'm so glad that I found out this about myself before college, because I can't even imagine going to college not knowing what I know about myself now. I just know that I learn differently than other people. So for example, for my short-term memory deficit, I know that it's really important for me to get information from my short-term memory into my long-term memory, which means repetition. So for vocab words, I always make flashcards. I actually learned about myself that I connect really well with music, so I often turn concepts or vocabulary into songs, and for some reason that gets information to my long-term memory. Don't ask why. I made a really epic song about marginal cost, and it just made everything make so much more sense to me. Whether you have a learning disability or not, learning what tactics work best for yourself is going to make you so much more successful in life. I now know that all the stigmas about learning disabilities are wrong. Just because you learn differently than other people does not mean that you are any less of a person, of a student. You are capable of absolutely anything, no matter what obstacle stands in your way. You just have to overcome it, and the more you learn about yourself and the more you learn how to learn, the better off you'll be. So if you or anyone you know in your life is struggling with the stigmas of a learning disability or struggling in school in general, there's always a silver lining, and you can always overcome any obstacle that stands in your way in life, whether it be in school, in your career, or in your personal life. For every problem, there is a solution. It may not be overnight, but in time, everything will work out and you will learn what is best for you, your education, your career, and your personal. Okay, you guys, so sorry I was talking a mile a minute. That is almost 20 minutes worth of footage, so I'm sorry about that. But if you enjoyed story times, just let me know by leaving a comment down below and give this video a thumbs up. That really helps me out to know if you guys enjoyed it or not. I want every single one of you to know that if you are struggling with absolutely anything in your life, I want to be like a big sister to you, or a little sister depending on how old you guys are. I will always be here for each and every one of you, and those of you know who have reached out to me with a problem, I always respond as much as I can, and just know that you're not alone and I will always be there for you. Just wanted to put that out there, but I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, click that red button, make my day. Follow me on social media and go check out my vlog channel. If you like more personal videos, that channel is full of those. I hope you guys have a great day, an even better week, and I'll catch up with y'all later.